Hello again, and welcome to Tips and Tricks from Audio Workstations. Today, we're going to talk about committing tracks and or freezing tracks in Pro Tools. So, what is committing and freezing? We shall find out. Why would you want to commit or freeze? Probably has to do with the fact that you used a lot of plugins and your computer is upset at you. At current moment, this computer is only 24% usage on the CPU. This is also a good strategy for anyone who uses any external DSP device, such as UAD. I'm not using that on this system, but the logic is just, hey, not that logic. We're in Pro Tools. The logic is that if you free up the CPU, your computer is happier and it can do more things. And if you're sure relatively about the inserts, aka the processing or effects that you're using directly on the channel, then you might as well give your computer a break and take up a little more space on your hard drive instead. And so the computer is going to render a file, but it's not going to really burden you with it in freezing, in that it's like a temporary file that will disappear if you unfreeze, and you'll just lose access to these plugins here temporarily until unfrozen. Alternatively, you can commit, which creates a separate track right next to your track, and provided that you don't have too many tracks overall in your session, then that should be fine for you. You can always go back to the old track. You can turn that track off. You can deactivate it and hide it so it's out of your way. And then you can just work from a fresh track, and you can pretend that it was recorded that way because it sounds better. So I am working on drums and bass right now, and I would like to, either freeze or commit some of these tracks. So let's demonstrate first the commit feature, and I'll demonstrate it in two ways on Pro Tools. One is committing just the first few plugins, and the other one is committing the whole track. So let's say that I'm absolutely sure about everything up until this compressor. So I like this saturator, which is the tape saturator, and I'm going to right click it and say commit up to this insert. And when I do that, it's going to ask me a bunch of questions. I want to commit the whole track. At times, you may want to just commit an edit or selection, but I haven't made a edit selection on the track, so it's not offering me that. That's just highlighting a piece of audio or MIDI. Consolidated, I don't mind doing that. I don't necessarily want to render the volume and the mute, but if you want to, you can. It may become important to you at some point. Do I want to copy the sends and the group assignments? Yes. I want to keep all my send effects, and I want it to stay in the drum group. And I want to insert it after the last track, and I want to take the original, which is the source track, and I want to hide it and make it inactive so that it's not in my way. And I want to do this offline so I don't have to listen to it. Boom. Now I watch patiently as the system renders, and luckily we're rendering here at like 20 something speed or 30 speed. If you're using UAD external, it won't be that fast, unfortunately, but it can still be a good idea. Okay, and it's going to finish up. So now we see the same track minus those plugins that are committed, and it just leaves the rest of them. And if I want to be efficient, I guess I'll drag the plugins I was unsure about up here. And then for the snare track, let's just say I'm happy with all these plugins and I don't want to burden the computer with doing them. So rather than the thing I just did would just commit up to this insert, and I was clicking on a plugin, I'm going to go down here to the actual name of the snare track. I'm going to right click there, and I'm just going to say commit, and same stuff. Then I'm going to wait. Okay, we're moving at about 20 speed here on our native only CPU mix. So this is all Avid subscription that I'm using, stock Pro Tools, and a couple native instruments. Okay, boom. Now my kick and my snare are a lot less heavy on plugins than they were before. So let's move on to the freeze method. So let's say these tom-tom tracks, I may want to quickly redo them. Let's say I'm less sure about that stuff. So you can also do the freeze up until this insert feature. So if I right click here and say freeze up to this insert, it's going to do the same thing, but you'll see it looks different, and it's not a separate track. It's the original track, same track. It's just inaccessible now on those plugins. So you're basically dealing with an audio file that has this and has this, but it does not yet have this, which is still live. And of course, I can still add more plugins to it. And then let's freeze a whole track. So let's take, let's take this ride track, which is pretty soft in the mix here. I will freeze the whole track. Just like that. And we're moving at about 45, 50 speed there. The less plugins you use and the less CPU heavy they are, the faster it'll offline freeze or commit. Okay, and so you could do this with anything that you're relatively comfortable with the sound of. You can always get back to the old track or unfreeze the track depending on which method you use. And this is also, let's talk about commit specifically as a nice way to do a project in a studio that has some particular plugins available that maybe you don't have at the other studio you might be working at later. So you can commit that track. You have the original with the plugin, and you have the committed track right next to it that has the rendered version of the plugin, so you don't need to run the plugin live. And now you can carry that sound over with you without necessarily running the plugin. So bouncing back and forth between studios is a great arena in which you can utilize the commit feature. One other quick example of when that's useful is using the virtual microphone system. For instance, here at Audio Workstations, we have for our members the Slate VMS, and that comes with plugins that help you figure out what microphone is best for your voice by being able to change it in post or be able to use a different mic for tracking than you are for mixing. But once you get to the point where you're picking the mic, you're liking the mic, you can commit only the mic plugin and then leave the studio with a rendered audio file that has that plugin baked into it, as we say. If you go back to the studio, you can go back to the original track, but at least you have the sound of the mic that you can further mix from. Okay, we're going to wrap that up there. That was tips and tricks number 4. If you like these tips and tricks or our business videos, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching Tips and Tricks from Audio Workstations. See you next time.